The Israelites stood at the edge of a promise. They had journeyed long and hard, through trials and tribulations, through deserts and hardships. Now they were here, at the brink of a new beginning, a land that had been promised to them for generations, a land flowing with milk and honey. It was a vision of abundance, a stark contrast to the barren wilderness they had left behind. The fertile fields stretched out before them, a testament to the prosperity that awaited, a place of their own. For the first time, they could imagine a future where they were no longer wanderers, no longer slaves. They could build homes, raise families, and live in peace. But fear cast a long shadow. Despite the promise of a bright future, the unknown loomed large. The fear of the unknown, the fear of failure, and the fear of the formidable foes that awaited them.
The kings of Canaan had heard of their coming. They were not ignorant of the Israelites' journey and the divine promise that accompanied them. They knew that this was not just any group of wanderers. This was a people with a purpose. Powerful warriors, they were ready for war. The Canaanite kings had rallied their forces, prepared their defenses, and were ready to protect their lands at all costs. They were seasoned warriors, battle-hardened and fierce.
The hearts of the Israelites trembled. They were not warriors, they were former slaves, people who had spent their lives in bondage and then wandering the wilderness. The prospect of facing such formidable foes was daunting. Would they be strong enough? The question lingered in their minds. Strength was not just a matter of physical prowess, but of spirit and faith. They needed to believe in themselves and in the promise that had brought them here. Would God be with them? Their faith had carried them this far, but now it was being tested like never before. They prayed for guidance, for strength, and for the courage to face the challenges ahead. Doubt whispered in their hearts. It was a quiet, insidious voice that questioned their worthiness, their capability, and their faith. It was a voice that could undermine their resolve if they let it. They had been slaves in Egypt, wanderers in the wilderness. Their past was filled with suffering and uncertainty, but it had also been a journey of growth and transformation. They had learned resilience, faith, and the importance of unity. Could they truly conquer this land? The question was not just about physical conquest, but about overcoming their own fears and doubts. It was about believing in the promise and in themselves.
Could we truly conquer this land? The question echoed in their hearts, a challenge to their faith and their courage. It was a moment of reckoning, a test of their resolve and their belief in the promise that had brought them here.
Joshua knew what they needed. Not just physical strength, but spiritual strength. He called for a renewal of their covenant with God.
Every male Israelite underwent circumcision. This painful act marked their commitment to God. It was a sign of their faith, a symbol of new beginnings.
Though their bodies were weak, their spirits soared. They remembered God's promises. They remembered His faithfulness. Then came Passover, a time to remember their deliverance from Egypt. No longer would they eat the unleavened bread of slavery. For the first time, they tasted the fruit of the promised land. The land nourished their bodies as God nourished their souls. The taste of freedom lingered on their tongues, a taste sweeter than honey, richer than milk. It was the taste of God's faithfulness. One evening, Joshua saw a man standing before him, sword drawn. The man's presence radiated power.
Are you for us or for our enemies?
Neither. I am the commander of the Lord's army.
Joshua fell to the ground in worship. He knew he was in the presence of God. The Lord gave Joshua his battle plan. It was a plan that required immense faith, a plan that seemed impossible.
Joshua didn't hesitate. He obeyed. He rallied the Israelites and they followed God's plan. They marched around Jericho just as the Lord commanded.
For 6 days they marched in silence. On the 7th day they shouted and the walls of Jericho crumbled. God had given them victory. Their obedience, fueled by faith, had moved the hand of God. The impossible had become reality. The story of Joshua and the Israelites is a journey of faith, marked by moments of fear and doubt, courage and obedience. It begins with the Israelites standing on the brink of the promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey, yet filled with formidable foes. Joshua, their leader, is tasked with guiding them through this daunting journey. It's a story that resonates through the ages, speaking to our own lives. Just as the Israelites faced the unknown, we too encounter moments that test our faith and resolve. The ancient ruins and landmarks of Israel stand as silent witnesses to the trials and triumphs of those who walked before us. We all face giants in our lives. These giants may not be literal, but they are no less intimidating. They come in the form of personal struggles, fears, and doubts that loom large and seem insurmountable. Moments when fear threatens to overwhelm us, when we stand at the edge of our own cliffs looking down into the abyss of uncertainty. The anxiety can be paralyzing, making it hard to take the next step. When the path ahead seems impossible, the journey is fraught with obstacles, the trail unclear, and the terrain treacherous. Yet it is in these moments of greatest challenge that our faith is tested and strengthened. But just like the Israelites, we have a God who fights for us. In the midst of our battles, we are not alone. We find strength in our faith and in each other, coming together in prayer and support just as the Israelites did. A God who calls us to step out in faith even when we are afraid. He asks us to trust in His plan, to take that first step into the unknown, believing that He will guide us through. The sunrise over a rugged path symbolizes the hope and new beginnings that come with each step of faith. Our journey of faith is not a solitary one. We are part of a larger community, a tapestry of stories woven together by our shared experiences and beliefs. As we share our stories of faith, we inspire and uplift one another, finding courage in the collective strength of our community. In moments of quiet reflection, we can see the hand of God in our lives, guiding us through the challenges and leading us to places of peace and fulfillment. These moments of contemplation remind us of the bigger picture, the divine plan that is unfolding in our lives. As we reach the summits of our personal journeys, we look back and see how far we've come, how the stepping stones of faith have led us to new heights. With each step, we grow stronger, more resilient, and more confident in our faith. Together, we continue our journey, stepping forward in faith, united in our purpose and guided by the light of God's love. The path may be challenging, but with faith, courage, and the support of our community, we can overcome any obstacle and reach the promised land that awaits us. God's promise to Joshua echoes through time. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. These words are for us too. When fear grips our hearts, when the way seems unclear, we can cling to this promise. God is with us. He will never leave us nor forsake us. In our weakness, He is strong. In our fear, He is our courage. The Israelites had to choose trust their own strength or trust God's power. They chose faith over fear, obedience over doubt. We face the same choice every day. Will we allow fear to paralyze us, or will we trust in God's plan? Letting go of fear is not easy. It takes courage to trust when we cannot see the outcome. But that's where faith begins. The renewal of the covenant reminds us that God's love is constant, even when we stray. He waits for us to return. He longs to bless us, to guide us, to give us victory, but we must choose Him. We must choose to walk in His ways. The covenant is a symbol of His unwavering love, a love that endures through every generation. The Israelites passed on the stories of God's faithfulness to their children, stories of deliverance, of courage, of miraculous victories. These stories weren't just history, they were lessons in faith. They taught them to trust in God, to obey His commands, to live lives of courage. We have the same responsibility to share our stories of faith with the next generation, to be examples of God's love and faithfulness. The Promised Land wasn't just a physical place for the Israelites. It represented God's blessing, His presence, His purpose for their lives. We all have a Promised Land in our lives, a place of peace, of purpose, of God's presence. This Promised Land is not necessarily a geographical location, but rather a state of being where we are in alignment with God's will. It is a place where our hearts are at rest, where our spirits are rejuvenated, and where we find true fulfillment in His presence. A place where we can experience His fullness. Imagine a life where every step you take is guided by divine wisdom, where every decision is made with confidence because you know you are walking in God's plan. This is the essence of the Promised Land, a life lived in complete harmony with the Creator. But that place isn't found through our own strength or our own plans. It's found through obedience. Obedience to God's word, to his commandments, and to his guidance. It requires us to surrender our own desires and ambitions and to trust that his plans for us are far greater than anything we could ever imagine, through trusting in God's guidance. Just as a hiker relies on a map and trail markers to navigate through unknown terrain, we must rely on God's word and his direction to navigate through the complexities of life. Trusting in his guidance means believing that he knows the best path for us, even when we cannot see the way ahead. Just like Joshua, let us be strong and courageous. Joshua faced numerous challenges and obstacles as he led the Israelites into the Promised Land, but he remained steadfast in his faith and obedience to God. His strength and courage came from his unwavering trust in God's promises. Let us choose faith over fear, obedience over doubt. In our own lives, we will encounter moments of uncertainty and fear, but in those moments we must choose to have faith in God's plan and to obey his commands, even when it is difficult. By doing so, we demonstrate our trust in him and our commitment to following his will, for God is with us and he will never leave us nor forsake us. His presence is a constant source of comfort and strength, guiding us through every trial and tribulation. When we walk in obedience, we are never alone. We are always accompanied by the Creator of the universe, and he will lead us to our promised land. The journey may be long and arduous, but with God by our side, we will reach our destination. The promised land is not just a distant dream, it is a reality that we can experience here and now as we walk in obedience and trust in God's unfailing love and guidance.